Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Our project today is going to be an Okuma Avenger ABF 4000. And I went to look for the schematics on this one. It's hard to find. I haven't found them. I found the ABF 40, and I believe this is a derivative off of that. But for some reason my searches came up empty. But that's okay. These reels are fairly consistent across their platforms. So we're going to do a how to take this apart, service it, and get it going again. This reel belongs to Leon. Leon has an interesting problem here. When this is in bait feed mode and your spool is turning backwards, there's no bait alarm. And he asked me if I could check that out and see what's going on. It's not the spool click, because when you're in drag, you can hear the spool click. That's not it. It's got to be something down here. There's usually a little tongue or something that's a noisemaker. That's what I was looking at for the schematic for, because, well, that would tell me what the part is, but I haven't been able to locate that. Well, we're going to take this apart. We're going to start by removing the exterior pieces, and as we do, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of fishing reel repair. If you like to understand a little bit more about the reels you're using, how they were made, how they come apart, how they wind up being serviced and the like, well, this is probably your channel. I cover all kinds of fishing reels. Today we're working on a bait feeder. Tomorrow it may be a trolling reel. The next day it may be a low-profile bass reel. So stay tuned, if you will, to learn all of them, and the best way to do that is to subscribe and use the notification button. Alright, I've taken the drag adjuster off. Now we're going to remove the spool, and the spool has the little click one. You were hearing that before, but that's not what's going to make this one turn. When you're in bait feeder mode, this ratchet, this whole thing will turn, and there should be a little button that as it turns on a click mechanism, it makes a noise. So we'll see. But in the meantime, you'll learn how to service this reel, how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. Once you've taken that spool off, we're going to take the handle out. And I believe this one's got a through handle, because yes, if you turn your handle and this button is moving, it means that this is a side plate screw that is holding a through post on your handle. So we want to take that off. And you do that by turning it counterclockwise. These are nice reels. This is a 4000 size reel. It's appropriate for rivers, bays, inlets, lakes, piers. It's a very kind of utilitarian reel. It goes across all kinds of platforms for fishing. And a lot of times people will ask me what's the first reel they should buy. And I ask them what type of fishing they intend to do, because you want to match your fishing to the reel. And when they say, oh, I'm going to do a little bit of everything, well, then it's the 4000 size reel that's almost always the go-to. If they have a predominance of freshwater fishing, you may want to make that a 3000. If they have a dominance for saltwater fishing, then maybe you want to move it up to the 5000. But the 4 is right in between, and it's a nice general practice reel for a lot of different uses. Alright, we're going to try and take this off. This is one of these little spring plastic formed clips. You got to be careful not to break it. Usually comes off one side or the other. And again, I'm just trying to be careful with this. I don't want to mar the case, and I don't want to break the clip. Here we go. So I use a small screwdriver, and you can pull it off the post. And then when you get it off the post, it should flex to the other side as well. One of my observations with these reels, with these clips, is that over time these clips get a lot of UV damage and sun ray and dry out and the like. And the problem that happens off of that is that they crack. They become very brittle. But this one didn't, fortunately. And you'll notice that off camera probably, I take my pieces and parts, I put them into a parts tray. That keeps them convenient for when it's time for me to reinstall. Alright, we want to take the click ratchet and the spool shims off next. You can usually do that just simply by pulling up. This is the spool shims. And there's a little seal washer on here as well. It's a clear plastic one, so don't lose that. Those go into my parts tray as well. And the Avenger reel has been around for a while now. It's a nice, moderate-priced reel. Very durable, good reputation. Okuma has a couple of others out there as well. It has the Coronado, for example, and a few others. I forget all of their little various brands, but the Avenger's pretty much right there, and durable. It's a nice little bait feeder reel if you're looking for a bait feeder. I'd like to see more about how that works. All right, I'm using a deep socket to take the rotor nut off because the lip is too deep to allow you to easily use a wrench in there. And this one comes off in a clockwise manner. It's a reverse thread. So I like to use a deep socket to break it. It looks like somebody, whoever it is that was trying to work this, has really kind of done something to that nut there. There's all kinds of frays and the like on the outside. My guess is they tried to use a wrench because of the angle, and a second my guess would be that they tried to remove this in a counterclockwise manner rather than a clockwise manner. So there you go. All right, this should come off now. I'm just going to lay that off to the side. That doesn't need to go into my box because, well, among other things, it's too big. All right, we have a couple of different screws now that are holding these pieces on, and you'll notice why I had to take the rotor off, because this shield here actually has a screw attaching it that is under the rotor. So you want to remove that rotor first so that you can remove the side plate. This little bezel or bump guard is held in by a screw. That will come off to reveal two more screws. I'll take that, and I keep the screws with those little bezels just so I don't mix them up. There's a lot of small screws with these. I had a joke going once that seems to remain consistent. Okuma probably had a sale on screws and had a sale on bearings because they put the screws all over the place as they do the bearings. Take pictures along the way as you're doing this reel. You'll notice there is an anti-reverse override spring right here. It's controlled by this lever. You'll see you can move the lever out. That spring stretches quite a bit, and then it relaxes to the anti-reverse position. I always like to relax that when I'm dealing with the reel so I don't lose that spring. That spring rides over a post here hidden under this. We'll get there in a moment. But I do want to point that out to you. Take the pictures. That way, as you're working on the reel, if you have to put it down, maybe you have to leave the project. Maybe in this case, what may happen is I have to go order a little click tongue or something, the noisemaker inside, if I can find it. And, well, if you have to leave that project, then the pictures are your reference point, particularly when you can't find the schematic. And like I said, I went out to the internet, tried to find the schematic. It wasn't there, so I'm kind of doing this one by feel. I'm taking the 4 side plate screws out that are visible, and I'm putting them on my table here. I want to make sure that those screws are all the same size. For those of you new to wheel repair, it's not unusual to have a short screw somewhere in there. And if it is, you just want to mark the location of that screw, just so when you go to reinstall, you're okay. Now in this case, all 5 of the side plate screws are the same. Credit to their designers to enable us to do that. I'm going to find a separate corner for my tray to put those side plate screws, and we should be able to pull up the side plate now. I think this has a little bit of a weather seal in it, or could have one, little gasket. So I'm just going to use a utility knife here just to move the case out. Getting stuck on this little handle triple over there. Now, again, another good place to take a picture before you go too far. Here's the answer right here. This is the little noise maker that should be making noise when this is in bait feeder mode. I'm just going to try and move this with the handle here. see if I can replicate the failure. That's always a good thing to try and do. We'll move that down. Now we're in bait feeder mode, and you want to turn the handle, and I'm not seeing the interaction there for the noisemaker. I'm not even quite sure where it is. This is not it. That's your noisemaker for your drag stack. So that's a little unusual. Okay, well, we're going to continue with the service of this reel. And the first thing you want to do is remove the clip that's holding the crosswind block on so that we can clear that. So roll your main gear down, turning the pinion gear, and that will give you access to the little spring clip here that's holding on the axle shaft. The spring clip comes out and up. Just going to use a small screwdriver to pry it out and up. And just keep working it, and you can get it kind of tilted like that. And just hold it. These are spring clips. They can fly. So you'll notice when you take it out that it's pretty much a symmetrical clip, so it's not going to matter which side it goes back in, but it will come in this way and flip and connect over the block there. That piece goes into my tray, and now I should be able to remove the axle shaft. Just keep pulling, it will come through. This was a little tight. And you can wipe that axle shaft off. This is a good place to take another picture. You've got the axle shaft out of the way now. So take a picture, note the orientation. Here's your main gear. We've set this off now for that trip. If it trips back, don't worry terribly about it, but you want to take a picture, make sure you know the orientation of that spring and the orientation of the trip lever, just in case something goes amiss there. All right, we should be able to remove the main gear now. Get that little thing from the handle on this side of it. There's a little handle screw washer that's preventing this from getting pulled out at the moment. So while I'm doing this, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, if you maybe want to know a little bit more about it, then I would suggest that you leave those in the comments section. I do try to answer questions on a regular basis. Generally, I try to do that in the morning. And if I can help you with some additional information, or maybe help you out of a tight spot where you're working on a reel, then I'll try to do my best to help you with that. All right, I'm just going to put that back on the screw here so I know where it goes. It's a little bit interesting when I try to use this with a black parts container. Now I can take my main gear out. Now I can remove the crosswind block. I'm still trying to see where would that work. This is going to be a trip mechanism. I'm just not seeing that noisemaker in here. Notice that this little retention spring that holds this is starting to come out. That's going to belong inside, and it's going to have the two wings open. Just be aware of that as you continue to work on your reel. You don't want to have that break in any regard. If that thing flies, well, you're going to be taking a look at it for sure. And sometimes it's even easier just to take that out and not risk it. So let's do that. This is the spring I'm referring to. It goes on the swing arm here. Okay, let's take the crosswind block out. As I block, I meant gear. That's held in by a screw here. And you want to make sure you take all of this out because you want to clean behind it. You want to make sure that all of the old greases and the like are removed from it. And one of the things you'll notice I'm not taking out is that spring assembly for the trip mechanism. You don't need to do that unless a spring is broken or something else is going on in there that just doesn't seem right. Okay, this should screw out now. to put these into my parts tray for a moment. You loosen up on that, and there's a retention clip here. There's the silver clip. So we want to do the same thing again here. Just bring that clip out. Sometimes it comes out easier than others. That's your retention clip for your drag stack. And everything seems okay in here. I'm not seeing that click mechanism. So this is a little bit of a puzzle to me in terms of why this is not clicking. Everything seems, well, according to the way it should. Well, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to try one more time to see if I can't find that schematic for this reel, because it is a little bit annoying to have the whole reel apart at this point and not know where that click mechanism is. I don't believe it's this. This piece, yeah, that's part of the handle, so that's going to just be when you're tightening and loosening. All right, I'll be right back. We'll see what we can find out if I can find that schematic. Well, I went back out to the internet. I was able to locate the schematic for it, and I'm looking over here at this part, key number 730, and it appears to me that this little piece here that has the click for your adjuster also has a tag arm that would run off and into the ridges of the shaft here, and it appears to be broken off. So I think that's the defective part. But let's continue on this. I've got to call into Okuma to see if I can order that piece. But in the meantime, we're going to just continue this as a normal service, and well, we'll put it all back together again, order that part, and come back out and do this again for him. A little bit of grease onto the back end of the stud. Your oscillation gear gets grease on all sides. Runs on the back. You want to get the grease into the teeth for the main gear. When you install that, you want to install that with the stud facing down. And then go to your parts tray to get that big screw there, big headed screw, to load that in. Hopefully I can reach Okuma. They're on the West Coast, so East Coast hours. Sometimes you get lucky and you reach them. Sometimes you have to wait for them. Sometimes they have to wait for you, I guess. Clean off that main gear. That would go in next. There is a little washer on the back end of this main gear, so just pay attention to that. I'm going to get a good amount of grease onto the teeth after you've checked them to make sure that they're true. And we can go ahead and install that. And we have the bearing on the main gear. Let's just go ahead and oil that. Okay. Next step then would be to bring your crosswind block on. Again, make sure that's cleaned and re-greased. And then go ahead and load that low. You want that because that'll give you the best reach as you go to install your axle shaft. On your axle shaft, again, we've cleaned that on the way out. Just make sure it's nice and clean and free from burrs. Just a light coat of grease on that. Don't go crazy, because when you put it through the pinion gear, it'll squeeze off any excess that you have. Bring the axle shaft down, merge that through your crosswind block, and then turn it and keep rotating it so that you can get it into your rear drag assembly. And then when you do that, you want the two slots for that retainer clip, high and low, to be positioned just that way. Get your clip for your crosswind block now. And we want to insert one into each side of those slots. This one seems to have a little spring to it. So get that lined up. Make sure you're in those slots. Once you have those started, just flip it over. Keep tension on it. Just press it in and under the lip of the carrier. Then you can rotate your pinion gear and make sure that it's carrying up and down. Okay, that takes care of that. What we really need to do now is just put the flip lever back. Remember, I moved that out of the way. So again, holding things so that they don't shoot, just go ahead and bring your trip lever around. Make sure that it seats into and onto the main gear. Now we can get that main gear side plate together. Well, before we do that, we want to replace that spring that I took out because I didn't want that to fly. Doesn't matter which way you put it in terms of on and off of the switch, but you do need to put the two wing sides. You need to compress it and put it in the slot there. I guess I can do a better job showing you with the pliers. And that's how it goes once you load that in. That side case is going to keep that in, but that's how you load it there. Now you can put the side plate on. Sometimes you need to just turn that bait lever a little bit just to seal that case, which is what I just did there. Now let's put a couple of these screws in and we'll test it before we start going too far down the path here. You want to make sure that you don't have a case bind, and you want to make sure that that trip lever is not out of place. It should be set that we've got that up on the main gear, so when we turn it we should see the other piece trip. Putting 5 screws in, and we'll give it a test. I don't want to continue with putting on the bezel or things like that to find out that we've got something jammed. It happens particularly with these bait feeders. So give it a turn. Make sure everything is working the way it should. And then if you like, you can flip your switch here. Turn it and make sure that it trips. And we just heard that trip, so we're in good condition with that. All right, next up then, we can put the bezel on the bottom here. And then right under that bezel, if you've been keeping your parts tray correct, should be the screw for that. And those of you who know me and know small screws know that's no accident. That's a regular occurrence here. All right, we've got those on, and we can take that lever now. Now the lever has one side for the screw and one side's closed face. Go for the closed face side first. Try and work that on, and again, you need to be kind of gingered with this, gingerly, because you don't want to snap these things. And unfortunately, as I said, particularly if these things start to get older, they start to get a break to them from the UV damage and hardening of plastics and the like. I don't like this at all, but that's the way they did it. And then we can take our screw that goes in there, and we'll have the bottom kind of tightened up here. So most of these bait feeders have a similar design. There's different trip mechanisms inside some. Some are more sophisticated than others. This is pretty simple, and I kind of like it because of that. Simplicity in my mind is always a sign of good design. All right, we're going to take the rotor, put that back on now. What you want to do in servicing the rotor is a drop of oil on each of the side wings and the roller. If that rotor was working fine, there's no need to take the bail off. I see a lot of folks that send me pieces and parts in bags because they got a little aggressive and thought that they had to take the reel down to everything. You don't. And remember, when we took this off, this came off in a rotational, in a clockwise rotation, which is a reverse thread. So when it goes back on, well, you reverse the thread again. These deep sockets are wonderful for clearing those shafts. And then you just want to make sure as you do this, give it a spin, make sure that it spins nicely, which it's doing. Next up then would be our click ratchet. On top of that there was the clear washer. And then on top of that was the spool shim. And we have one more piece before we go too far. That's the tie down screw for the rotor nut. I want to make sure that doesn't rotate by vibration. Let's come over to our spool. We'll take care of that. Hopefully by the time I'm done with this video, Okuma is open on the West Coast, and we will call them, get a replacement part. We'll finish out this reel here. Okay, there's a series of felt washers in this one, I believe. Yep. There's probably about 6 of them. There's a lot of washers in here. There's a bearing for the bottom of it. And another felt. Nothing wrong with felt washers. You need to keep them lubricated. That's the biggest issue with felt washers. If they dry out, they start to shear. You can replace felt washers with carbon text or hard materials if you like, if you find that you're tearing them up. But if you're not tearing them up, there's no need to replace them. All right, I'm going to take oil onto that bearing. Then we have a 6 drag system. So the first one in is a felt washer. I use oil on them. You could use grease. I prefer oil. And the first of the keyed washers. Put the second one in now. Same thing. These are pretty wet. I'll just do that more for example than anything. Second one goes in. The keyed, the eared washers in the middle. That's the one with the 2 points. It fits in the grooves. I probably was doing that pretty quickly. Then the top keyed washer. Then the pentagon clip goes in the groove. Start by anchoring one side in, hold it, it's a spring, it will shoot. And then just load it so that all of the points are in the slot. And we can go ahead and install this now. Tie this back on, we're kind of coming to where we started this thing. And we know where, we think we know where the part is that is not allowing for the noise on the outbound side of the bait feeder. Okay, just finish tightening it down, make sure that it holds, and then back it off. You saw we put all that oil in there. If you leave it tightened, it's going to squeeze all that oil out, and it's going to compromise the service. So go ahead and take that and loosen it up. Let's put the handle back on now. Ready for a final test here. Handle one side, handle screw the other side. Remember that little plastic clip that goes in it, holds it and anchors it to that main gear. So we know we have to order a piece. Hopefully it's available, it's a newer model. We'll call Okuma, we'll get that piece, and not only will Leon have a service reel, but he will have one that's got a bait click. All right. So it's running fine in this regard. Let's go ahead and put the switch back on. We've got our anti-reverse. Make sure your bail flips. It's going to bait feeder mode, spinning back nice and easily. Trip it. Locked in for the top drag. Just needs some adjustment here in terms of the spin rate for your bait feeder. There you go. It's a little tighter. And that's it. That's your Okuma ABF 4000. It's how to take it apart, service it, and get it ready to go fishing again. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. It truly is appreciated. To everyone, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.